I'd like to touch on a few points. Firstly, the 4 Rs, as I am calling them, not the 3 Rs, but the 4 Rs. A quick just scan over what happened over the last couple of years and where we are now, and why thinking about the ambassadors, those partners who are leaving your firms, really do need some attention. So with my partners, we spend a lot of time out in the marketplace and very surprised often by the ad hoc manner in which partners leave their firms, with little or no preparation for what we call their encore. And thinking about life expectancy at the moment, most of those partners will have something to 20 to 25 years of active productive time that they can be using. And yet they're leaving their firms with little or no preparation. Part of that surprise is also that most of the people on this call will be very familiar with the idea of share of wallet. How much of the client's wallet are you able to access? And we know that 5% is both good and bad. If you've got 5% of share of wallet, then actually that's bad news because there's 95% that you haven't got. But it's also good news because it means there's 95% that you could go after. And that's a calculus good managing partners are doing all of the time. But we don't see it applied internally too often. And that takes me to my 4 Rs. And so the invitation would be, if you think about the partners who you know are leaving your firm over the next 3 to 5 years, and then profile them. How many of those are holding roles, practice group heads, managing partners, leading big client teams, major client engagements and matters? Second, how many of those partners are essential to the firm's reputation? No, now one individual will not be, but who out of the rest of them are essential to your firm's reputation, Mr. or Mrs., whatever your firm's name. And then crucially, out of those people who are leaving, where are the big relationships and where are the big revenues attached? Are we clear on that? And if we think about the last couple of years, professional service firms in the main have had a pretty good pandemic, and that's not an oxymoron. So certainly on the work front, revenues are up, utilization's been up, and frankly, firms needed just about every able-bodied client server they could get their hands on. In short, Armageddon didn't happen. But something even more remarkable happened. We turned businesses on a sixpence in that time. But something else happened as well. Lots of people were making quiet judgments in the background. We've heard of the Great Resignation, we've heard of quiet quitting, and I was minded that Dame Sharon White, the chair of John Lewis Partnership, said there's 1 million people aged 50 plus who've left the workforce over the last couple of years. UK jobless figures that Richard alluded to as we started, 3.5%, the lowest for 50 years. And the Office of National Statistics telling us that 50% of our workforce is aged over 50. I was chatting to a senior partner the other day who said, this war for talent stuff is nonsense. It's over. War for talent's done. And I looked at them and they're the head of a major firm. I said, really? And they looked at me and said, oh yeah, talent has won. Now, one of the insidious parts in the back of this is something else has happened, something unseen in a lot of cases. People are adjusting and making choices. And the question I'm asking is, which of your partners are making choices, but they just haven't told you yet that actually, I want out of this. I've made enough, I'm tired, and we're seeing a lot of tiredness in the marketplace. So now, in spite of the economic turmoil, we're heading towards some semblance of trying to get business as usual back on track. And firms are looking at balancing the books, reshaping the pyramid. There's been big pay rises that have hit the bottom line. Inflation is running amok at the moment. We're seeing a lot of pressure on the bottom line. Uncertainty from Brexit is still lurking around, and the ever-present need to drive up profit per equity partner. So amongst those known withdrawals, where do your revenues, relationships, and where do you have leadership at risk? But that's the ones you do know about. And it's worth reflecting, why don't partners put their hands up and say, actually, I'm going in 2 or 3 years' time. There's a fear of losing clients, revenues, not meeting my targets, being excluded, actually compounding the lack of collaboration that Eddie was just talking about, feeling excluded from the partnership business, and crucially, at a personal level, not being clear on what to do next. The big argument I would make is that we should be normalizing the exit process for partners. Why should this be high on the client agenda? on the managing partners agenda, the leadership agenda. Firstly, clients don't like surprises. So if you're going to start changing leadership on teams, it's an opportunity here for smooth transitions. Financially, which revenues have you got at risk, point one, but also the impact on capital flows when you've got partners leaving the business. Thirdly, it demonstrates to the young people in the firm that there is room and headroom for them to grow into, to take on the leadership mantle. For the firm, are you getting the most from those partners who are going to be leaving? The social capital, intellectual capital, the expertise, the wisdom, the knowledge that's in their heads. And then crucially, from a leadership perspective, how do the partners who are remaining see the way their partners who are departing have been treated? What are they saying to each other? Have these people been treated fairly, equitably? Did the partners who are departing act in a manner that was consistent with the partnership ethos? We tend to have big celebrations about new partners when they're coming in. How do we celebrate those who are leaving? Normalizing the exit process. So for the partners themselves too, there are choices to make. What do I do with the 60 to 80 hours a week that I have? And possibly the absolute worst heresy, you can only play so much golf in a week. What do I do with the rest of my time? A big challenge, how do I describe myself going forward when I've left the firm and I am no longer a partner? You can only say to people, well, I used to be a partner in whatever firm for so long. What will my future relationship with the firm be? Or in some cases, do I even want a relationship with the firm? And I've heard that sentiment expressed several times as well. And then the big issue, how do I plan to handle my transition? These are big, life-changing psychological issues. And all of that brings me back to the idea of ambassadors at the end. So all of these things impact the sort of ambassadors who leave your firms. And we all know some of the major consulting firms who trade on the way their former partners are positioned and placed in organizations. So who are your ambassadors? Are they apathetic? They just don't talk about you anymore? Are your ambassadors attackers, actively out there to any and everybody who will listen, bad-mouthing the firm, saying what a terrible place it was and how poorly they were treated in their last time? Are they assassins? These are the quiet ones who, when they're prodded or poked, or maybe there's been too many gin and tonics or too much wine, will start to let me tell you about, and will actually deliver devastating broadsides. Or are you sending your former partners out as advocates, ones who are making a great play and telling the world what a great firm they are? So I guess my challenge to the leaders who are listening is, are you creating a vicious cycle or a virtuous circle with those ambassadors who are leaving your firm and heading into a new life? So